Alphabet just spent $4.75 billion on something most people never think about when they hear the word technology: raw electricity, land, and giant power projects that will quietly feed Google's future artificial intelligence. This deal is not about launching a new app or chip. It is about turning Google into a kind of energy company. The real story hides inside words like gigawatts, grid bottlenecks, and long-term infrastructure commitments that almost no headline explains properly. Today, this entire story will be unpacked in simple language. What Alphabet really bought, why artificial intelligence is suddenly all about power, and how this move could lock smaller players out of the race before they even begin. Think back to the early days of Google, when it was just a search bar and a clean white page. Now imagine that same company buying huge solar farms, battery parks, and land for data centers the way others buy office buildings. Alphabet, the parent company of Google, has agreed to acquire Intersect, a clean energy and data center infrastructure developer, in a $4.75 billion cash deal, plus the assumption of the company's debt. Google already owned a minority stake from an earlier funding round, but this time it is taking control of the entire machine. The projects in operation, the projects being built, and the pipeline of energy and data center sites planned for the next few years. When companies talk about assets in this context, they are not talking about some abstract number on a spreadsheet. They mean real land, real solar panels, real batteries, and real cables that will move electricity into giant buildings full of computers. Intersect currently has around $15 billion worth of assets, either operating or under construction, and that alone shows how much physical infrastructure is already in motion behind the scenes of this deal. By around 2028, projects associated with Intersect are expected to represent about 10.8 gigawatts of power capacity online or in development. To make that number intuitive, think of the Hoover Dam, one of the most famous hydroelectric dams in the United States. The power linked to Intersect's projects is more than 20 times the electricity that Hoover Dam produces. Put simply, Google is buying the rights to an enormous amount of future electricity, enough to feed an army of artificial intelligence data centers that will run day and night, processing search queries, YouTube videos, cloud workloads, and massive language models. If you are finding this breakdown useful, remember to like, share, and subscribe, so these behind-the-scenes moves in technology and energy keep reaching you in plain language. To understand why Alphabet is doing this now, it helps to zoom out to the bigger problem. Artificial intelligence is hitting a power wall. Training and running large language models is not like running a few laptops. It is more like running millions of high-end gaming computers at full tilt, 24 hours a day, inside huge, air-conditioned warehouses known as data centers. All of that hardware needs a constant flow of electricity, and not just a little bit, but amounts that can rival the consumption of entire towns or small cities. The existing power grids in places like the United States were not originally designed for this sudden wave of energy-hungry artificial intelligence infrastructure, and local utilities are struggling to expand fast enough. They need to build new power plants, upgrade transmission lines, and secure permits, all of which can take years, not months, especially when local communities and regulations are involved. When too many new data centers want to connect at once, the power grid behaves like a highway facing a traffic jam. There are bottlenecks, waiting lists, and sometimes outright rejections or delays because the system does not have enough capacity ready. For a company like Alphabet, waiting around for local utilities to catch up with artificial intelligence demand is risky. It could mean having the chips, the models, and the software ready, but no reliable electricity to run them at full scale. That is why buying Intersect is so strategic. Instead of depending entirely on external utilities, Alphabet can expand its own power generation capacity alongside new data centers, securing long-term supplies of electricity directly tied to its artificial intelligence infrastructure. In effect, Google is building its own private on-ramp to the power grid, so that when it wants to expand artificial intelligence, the power will already be reserved and controlled. And Google is not the only one thinking this way. OpenAI, the company behind ChatGPT, is associated with long-term infrastructure commitments that have been estimated at around $1.4 trillion for data centers, energy projects, and the hardware required to run future gen.